Hi, good afternoon and welcome. We are here for the panel Footprints of Diversity, the Steps and Approaches to Outreach for a More Diverse Writing Center. This will be delivered by Lamar Writing Lab students Ronin Chaney, Mariam Hamouie, Elisabeth Pope, and Nithya Ravi. So join me in welcoming them, and I will turn it over to you all.
All right, guys. Switch my camera. Switch camera. Okay, guys. I like to, all right. I'd like to welcome you all. This is our SWCA presentation, and today we're so happy you're joining us. And we are doing 4% diversity, as you said, the steps and approaches to outreach to create a more diverse writing center. So I think we should start by introducing ourselves. I can start with me. I'm Ronin Chaney. I'm in 12th grade. I'm peer consultant, and my fun fact is that my grandfather played in the NBA.
My name is Mariam Hamouie, and I'm also in 12th grade, and I'm a peer consultant as well. And my fun fact is that I have a cat.
Hi, my name is Nithya Ravi. I'm also a senior peer consultant, and my fun fact is that I've been to 11 countries.
Hi, my name is Elisabeth Pope. I'm also a senior peer consultant, and my favorite genre to read is mystery.
All right, so I think it's time to get started here. And so, go back. So let's start with defining our purpose. So as diverse writing life consultants, we understand that writing connects many people and is an important factor all throughout life. Therefore, we want to make sure that the writing lab reaches a diverse audience as well, because I think it would be very beneficial to all writing centers in the nation. So this is our writing lab. It's composed of 25 peer consultants in both grades 11 and 12. We hold 30-minute long lunch sessions with our consultants, but for fact, we also have two faculty consultants that have PhDs. For these faculty consultants, they can have meetings at any time. All of us are in IB courses, and we've had over 100 visits this year. We mostly work with school-related writings, however, but we also offer personal writing as well, in case anyone wants to come up with that. So this is diversity in our entire school, not just writing lab. So our school is in Houston. We have 3,125 students with a total minority rate of 77%. Nearly 80% of our students participate in the International Baccalaureate. So that's from classes to just entire programs. And our writing lab is in nearly all IB diploma students. We don't get many underclassmen or non-IB students. Our writing lab is located in the old building of our school, which obviously does not get as much traffic as the new part where most kids have classes. So now I think we should define what IB is. So when we say IB, we're talking about the distinguished courses at Lamar that hold the IB label. The IB diploma program is an optional route in which puts students in different classes than the standard high school ones. The reason this matters to us is that IB students have a lot more writing projects compared to other students, from extended essays to internal assessments, things like that. So that explains why the average student that's in the writing lab is also in IB diploma. So why is diversity in the writing center important in the first place? Well, in the writing center, people come with a variety of assignments. So a couple that we get are projects, lots of projects, a lot of economics assignments, a lot of philosophy papers, and language assignments. So having diversity in the writing lab gives an opportunity not to only create a comfortable environment for everybody, but to also address any piece of writing that comes into our writing lab. Because what's going to happen when you have no one that can do philosophy? Well, that person just cannot get the help that they need. So I think that is important. So I think we should start with our first activity, and you're going to define diversity, and you're going to consider your own school and diversity in your own life, and you're going to define it in your own terms. And you can go ahead and put that in the chat, or if you're watching from afar, you can write it on a piece of paper. But we're going to have about 2 minutes to do that. So. And remember, that's sharing in the chat, the Zoom chat. Just letting you know. Okay, that's a good answer right there. I like that one. All right, so I saw some good answers there. And so I guess you guys answered kind of in line with our own definition of diversity. But we might as well read our own definition. So our definition of diversity is different people of economic, cultural, religious, linguistic, and academic backgrounds, which is a wide variety of people within a community. So now is another activity, and your goal now is to name as many types of diversity that can be found within your school as possible. So I want you to go beyond forms of diversity that we normally think of. You have 2 minutes, and go ahead and put that in chat once again, and your time starts now. Differences that distinguish us. That's a good answer. That's a good answer. I've never seen that one before. Genre. That's interesting. I've never seen that one before. Okay, so you guys did good. So here are some of our definitions of I mean, not definitions, but here are our forms of diversity. So we have grade diversity, so like grade levels, age levels. We have academic courses. We have neurodiversity, linguistic diversity, ethnic diversity, and also religious diversity. So it's just something you can think about. Types of diversity you don't often just think of at first. Um, so I guess it's time for story time. So when I first joined the writing lab, I was not really comfortable because, well, first of all, the first time I ever went to the writing lab, it was just for an assignment. And I walked in, but I saw there's a lot of different people that could help me. I was a walk-in, I wasn't actually an appointment. So I walked in and I was very surprised because there's so many different. I thought I had a very specific issue with my paper, but because there's so many different types of people that could help me, I think that actually has affected me, and I may have inspired me to join the writing lab. So I think that that's another reason why it can be important to have diversity, so it can make people comfortable and feel safe, and they can kind of maybe even join the writing lab themselves, so you can even build your own writing lab just by having a diverse writing lab. So this is to sign off. I put a picture of trail. We put a picture of trail mix here because when you put out trail mix, you don't just want one kind of nut. You just don't want like the peanuts, right? To have a good set of trail mix, you have to have a bunch of different types of nuts, and that's why I think this is the perfect representation of diversity. So now I'm gonna pass it to Mariam.
Hi, so for this part of the presentation, we have set up a Google Drive folder to give you guys the resources to be able to implement diversity and outreach practices within your own writing labs. So the link to this Google Drive will be posted in the chat right now for everyone. So please let us know if anyone is having any trouble opening it or accessing anything on the drive. This drive contains our pre-writing lab on tour data and our general outreach strategies, as well as our post-writing lab on tour and outreach strategy data. We'll also have posters that we made for our school and a guide to be able to make your own poster. Overall, this is going to be a good way for you guys to follow along and to be able to use after our presentation to be able to implement diversity in your own writing labs. So, is everyone able to access the drive? Okay, so I went ahead and posted the link in the chat myself. So if everyone can just take a second and try and open it up. And if no one is having trouble with it, we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, next slide. So to first understand our procedure and our methods, we need to understand what affinity spaces are. So affinity spaces are defined as communities created based on shared interests, perspective, and beliefs. Affinity spaces in schools can look like sports such as soccer, football, or track. It can look like different clubs like Med Club, Gals, which is Girls at Lamar, and Book Club. The writing lab itself can even be considered an affinity space, which we've noticed as the writing lab is generally made up of students with common interests or backgrounds, or IB students who are interested in writing or tutoring. So, how does this relate to diversity and outreach in the writing lab? The fact is that individuals are less likely to reach out and explore other affinity groups that they are not familiar with due to lack of confidence and worry of exploring new spaces. This means that students who are not familiar with the writing lab will not come in out of fear of exploring the writing lab in its new space. This idea is important in informing our outreach strategies that we would be using throughout this process. So, to continue on, the potential reasons for lack of outreach is highlighted by Daisha Denise Oliver in the tutors column is Writing for the Majority, Examining Diversity in the Writing Center. In this, she discusses potential reasons for the lack of diversity in writing centers, which she names as lack of confidence and fear of going into new spaces. So, as we mentioned before, this relates to the concept of affinity spaces, as students are less likely to come into the writing lab if they don't feel like it aligns with their demographics and their interests. But the writing lab is for everyone. So, how can we get students to explore new affinity spaces and realize that they're welcome in our writing lab? So, one of the first barriers that we've noticed in our writing lab appointments is that many students are making appointments based on mandatory grades from other assignments, such as the philosophy IA. Some students make appointments but do not actually come in which they get marked a no show, or some cancel their appointment beforehand. Um, I myself had booked a writing lab meeting with a fellow consultant to talk through our outreach engagement strategies that we had planned, such as the writing lab on tour, and I actually received a really interesting perspective from her as I was trying to explain that we were trying to get more students to come in and enjoy coming into the writing lab. She basically told me like, "Hey, look, people are just trying to graduate. Like they kind of do not care about coming in, and they're kind of trying to do the bare minimum." So, while it seemed like we were having a casual conversation, this actually shined a light on one of our biggest issues, which is like lack of incentive, as many students don't see a point in actually coming into the writing lab unless they're given the incentive of having a grade, and they don't realize how beneficial it may be. So the next issue we had to tackle was how can we increase the incentive for students to not only book but attend their sessions? So, as stated before, we've noticed that our appointments are forced, or in other words, like students only make appointments so that they can get a grade from a teacher that assigned an assignment, paired with long form writing assignments, which is seen a lot in our IB diploma program. Some of these assignments have looked like the career program reflective projects, the economics internal assessment, the RPPF, which goes in accordance with our TOK extended essay, and the philosophy internal assessment. So students are often given a grade based on if they make the appointment or they get extra credit for the assignment. Personally, I have had appointments for 3 out of the 4 of these assignments, and in some instances, students only make the appointment but won't show up as they're not really interested in the feedback. So this kind of makes us think about how do we get students to come into the writing lab in the first place, but also come into the writing lab because they want to or like out of their own free will. Or in a different scenario, are there students that maybe want to come in but have not heard about the writing lab yet? So how do we get these students this exposition? So after all of these questions floating around, we were able to formulate our outreach strategies. Our strategies were informed by the prior research and our own experiences as writing lab consultants and students who had come into the writing lab before with our own writing. So we were able to create 3 methods to target the broadest audiences in our school community. We used posters, feedback forms, and the most hands-on was the writing lab on tour. So our first method, the posters, our team set up posters throughout our campus to bring in a wider audience. Um, on the posters, one of them is actually on the right side of the slide. We used bright colors to engage the audience with big text to convey our message that everyone is welcome. We had posters all throughout the school so that the foot traffic, as people were walking along in the halls, they would be able to see these posters and learn more about the writing lab. And if they were interested, come in. Our next outreach strategy was feedback forms. So our team set up forms on the booking page of our website that allowed students to pick through options of how they heard about the writing lab. In this way, we were able to be more informed about outreach methods that worked and reach students that were actually coming in or making appointments. The last outreach strategy that we employed was the writing lab on tour. This was our way for direct outreach where we could talk to the students face to face and make sure they heard about the writing lab. Our team organized meetings with freshman and sophomore English teachers to conduct advertising in their classes. The writing lab consultants were able to visit the English classes and talk to the underclassmen, as well as answer any questions that they may have had. So, to go into more detail about our first outreach strategy, our team made 6 posters total to hang around various spaces in the school in order to engage students passing by. Our team made 4 posters specifically in English with varying designs and then translated 2 of them into Spanish. So our posters consisted of basic elements so that no matter which poster a student interacted with, they would be able to get the same basic information about the writing lab. On these posters, we included a QR code or link to the writing lab appointment website so that students would easily be able to access the website, sign up for an account, or if they already had one, be able to make an appointment with a peer writing consultant or faculty staff. We also made sure to include our location or the classroom number in which the students would be able to understand and recognize where the writing lab is. As we said before, it is in our old building. We also included general fun messages which varied on our posters to let audiences know that they could come in anytime with any piece of writing. Some of these texts included types of assignments that we've worked on or saying that we can directly help with any piece of writing. As you can see, we've included the other 3 poster designs, with the leftmost one being the Spanish one. We placed these posters strategically in areas where we knew that there would be a lot of foot traffic, specifically in the new building, as that's where a lot of the people's core classes are, which would lead to greater chances of the poster being seen. Since our school does organize grade levels by halls, we did put 1 poster per grade level, as we know that students in their respective grade would be able to see those since they would have a majority of classes in those space. This is by no means a new strategy for the writing lab, as we have used posters to promote other events in the writing lab, such as the winter writing contest, in which any student could enter by submitting an entry to the prompts created for a chance to win. So with this, enough of our own posters. We're going to move on to our next activity, and we'll be giving everyone some time to make their own poster and advertise your writing center. So there are a few options for this. The first one is that you can go ahead and open up Canva. If you don't already have an account, make one and um, choose a fun design. We got our poster templates from Canva as well, and we edited the text to conform to our writing lab. So that would be the first option. The second option is to just go ahead and pull out a paper and pencil and take some time to talk through ideas with your neighbor and come up with an awesome poster, and then draw whatever you think is the best. Keep in mind that if you have too many words, people won't be able to read all the info while walking fast in the hallway. So remember to keep in mind who your audience is and what you want them to see. Also, have fun with it and remember that the design is what attracts people to come in. So people will come in if they see fun, colorful, bright, bold designs, and it'll encourage students to interact and go up to it. So on the slide, we've also listed the 4 main components that we used on our posters that could inform everyone else's posters, such as a motto to invite all students, the location of your writing lab, listing some assignment examples, and a QR code or link to a website so that students could go ahead and act and make an appointment themselves. So we're going to give you guys 10 minutes to make your own poster. If you're having any trouble, please type out questions in the text box. So yeah. Okay, guys, we're halfway through with our poster activity, so I hope you guys are having a lot of fun. While y'all are doing this, another thing to think about is like, what's your favorite part of the poster you've made? Because as a student, if you think about the favorite part of your poster, you can also think about what your audience will like most about your poster. But we're continuing on. So keep making those posters and feel free to share in the chat. We do have a question in the chat. Has anyone made posters or flyers directed towards teachers or advertised writing center services? That's a really good question. Um, we haven't even thought of that, and so that might be something that we can use for like further research. Try and see if we can get teachers more on board with it, and then that way they can advertise it to their students. So that's really good. If anyone is making their poster about that, um, please respond in the chat. Okay, so we have had some people in our physical space share like posters they've done on a piece of paper. So we're gonna go ahead and show them and see what they've done and recognize their work. So we have this one. It's a really cute little notebook sort of poster, which is really interesting because writing lab you think of like a pen and paper. So it kind of takes that element of the paper and makes it a poster, and it says Lamar Writing Lab. It does have our location. It does use the element of saying what assignments we offer. So like psych, EE, resume, scholarship, and then it says everything in all caps. Um, it does also say a motto, which I thought was really cute. I'm gonna read it out. Come to the Writing Lab, a place filled with ideas, hopes, and dreams like Disney. That is so fun. I think it definitely engages audiences because they're like, "Whoa, like Disney? Like, what does that even mean?" And then they wanna come in. So, this is a really good poster. Everyone's poster is probably so awesome, but I did wanna highlight that. And we have another poster. This one's more simple, but I think I love that because it gets the message through very directly and there's not a lot of words. So people can get straight to the point. The point is welcome to the writing lab. And it has also a little paper and pen writing to show like a symbol of the writing lab. This obviously, like our author said, will have more color and have more will be more complex. But this is so fun and it's really straight to the point. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and move on. So for our second form of outreach, we did the online and paper feedback forms. So when booking an appointment, all students have to select an option, and we use this as our pre-data, and also we will use it as our post-data as we start getting more appointments. During our monthly all consultants meeting, we also passed out a paper feedback form with 6 more specific questions to add to our pre-data from the writing lab consultants themselves, such as when did you hear about the writing lab and how, or do you notice your appointments are from one specific group of or area of students, which group, so that we could really see what types of diversity we're doing well and which ones we're lacking in. We did provide evidence or photos of both of our feedback forms. The online one is at the top and our paper feedback forms are on the bottom. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Nithya.
Hi, I'm Nithya, and I'll be going over the next section. So now we have our most common answers on our peer writing consultant feedback forms, so we can get a general idea of what our consultants think. So first we have, how did you hear about the writing lab? The most common answer that we received was that hearing about the writing lab came from IB classes and teachers giving out information about the writing lab. What we want to approach will change because of this answer, and we'll detail that later on. So the next question that we asked was, what group of students is most prominent in the writing lab? Our most common answer was one that we were pretty aware of and we'll touch on later again, that we get a lot of IB diploma students that are juniors and seniors. Most of them are here to complete or get help on their extended essays, which are required 3,000 to 4,000 word essays for the class theory of knowledge, as well as college essays, which are very big amongst the seniors in September through November. So the next question that we got was, what forms of diversity should we address? Our consultant said that we needed a larger focus on the freshmen and sophomores at our school and the students not in the IB diploma program, which would be the IB career program. It's really vital to hone in on the select few issues that the peer writing consultants come up with because of how widely recognized it is, meaning that it can prove to be a pretty large issue. And the last question that we asked was to affirm whether or not we address diversity well. The question was, what forms of diversity do we excel at? Our most common answer was that we received a lot of IB diploma students, people from different class backgrounds, and racial diversity. The reason that we asked this is to affirm that it's a form of diversity that we should maintain, but not necessarily build on. So now we're going to take a brain break. I know it's pretty close to us making the posters, and we have a couple questions here that we really want you guys to send your answers in the chat to, which are, would you want a camp, beach, or ski vacation? What is your favorite animal, and what do you like most about your writing center? We're also going to give our answers, but we're about to get into some pretty heavy data analysis, so get ready by taking a breather and just relax. I'm gonna answer all three questions really quick, and then I'll hand it over to my consultants next to me. I love camping, so I would say camping because I love looking at the stars at night. I think it's really fun. Um, and my favorite animal would probably be a dog because I love my dog. And what I like most about my writing center is I like that it feels like a comfortable space. Like the whole the flooring, everything is like wood, which is like very homey to me. So I feel like I'm kind of in a library all the time. It feels nice. Okay, I'm gonna give the microphone to Ronin for him to answer the questions as well.
So for me, if I had to choose, I would pick a ski vacation because, in my opinion, like I just think you can't beat the adrenaline rush of rushing down a mountain at high speeds. My favorite animal, if I had to think about it, I guess I'll pick a killer whale. And what do I like most about the writing center? I think I like how everyone's kind of friendly to each other. Everyone's kind of friends, or at least acquaintances in here. Like there's no one. I don't think we have any enemies in the writing lab. That's just all I'll say.
Okay, so for the first question, I am 100% gonna pick beach vacation. I do not want to have to fight for my survival in the wilderness, and I do not like want to be cold out of my own free will. So, and I also love tanning, so I kind of need a beach vacation. My favorite animal is definitely cat, all types of cats, like domestic cats, big cats. My fun fact was that I have a cat and I love my cat, so I love cats. And then what do I like most about the writing center? I would also have to say like the physical environment we're in. I love that we're so welcoming. Like we have snacks and we have books, and the way it's set up makes it kind of just not feel like a normal classroom. It makes it feel like an environment that you can really like relax in and also like get a lot of work done.
Um, I would say my favorite type of vacation is camping because I like to hike so I can look at the views from the trail. My favorite animal is probably a dog because my dog is the best. And my favorite part of the writing center would be all of the peer consultants and the faculty consultants. Everyone has a different opinion and can always help you improve whatever you're writing, whether that's college essays or some really specific history IA.
Okay, I'm glad that we got to answer those questions. And I want to outline some of the ones from the chat because I think that they're cute. Um, we love Miss Keller loves the beach, which is great. So she would go on a beach vacation. Abril likes hiking, so she'd go camping. William also would go camping so that you can take a breather to slow down. We have a bird lover. We got one person chose beach ski because they can't decide between them. Oh, Tiffany and Lena chose beach ski. They like otters, meerkats, dolphins, and humans, I guess. And the last one is also from Abril, and she likes how her writing lab has great consultants with a lot of enthusiasm. So thank you so much for these answers, and we're gonna move on to the next slide. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what Writing Lab on Tour is. So basically, the Writing Lab on Tour is, oh, wait, sorry. After seeing our answers on the feedback forms, we decided that starting our own initiative called the Writing Lab on Tour would be the best way to address the forms of diversity that we don't excel at. So, Writing Lab on Tour explained. The Writing Lab on Tour, which is an initiative that our group came up with, would help put the Writing Center on wheels as we travel to other areas of the school and spread awareness. To put the Writing Lab on tour in simple words, we're taking 2 to 4 consultants to go spread the word about how the Writing Lab can be beneficial, going to freshman and sophomore English classes and talking to them, and figuring out what exactly we can help the students with and letting them know because they may not know how the Writing Lab works. We want to encourage the underclassmen to attend the Writing Lab after we noticed that there was a big difference in underclassmen and upperclassmen that we receive. So the data here kind of helps us get a rough idea of what we wanted to change. So we have a couple slides of this. So the first one that we want to address is the fact that most of our appointments that are scheduled are with our faculty writing consultants, who are amazing, but we do want more meetings with our peer consultants as well, because our faculty receives the most, and we want to encourage people to book with our peers to get a student's perspective rather than someone that's not their peer. The next data is a question that we asked our peer consultants. We also asked it to our students because we want to get them their perspective rather than someone that like works at the writing lab, more from someone that comes voluntarily. And the majority of the students said that they heard about the writing lab from a teacher, but some said they heard from students, which was a good sign for the writing lab on tour. And the rest of the types, like class presentations, posters, social media, and others, have similar numbers. This data showed that the primary outreach comes from teachers who assign their students tasks of going to the writing lab, which Mariam mentioned. And this incentive kind of helped us change the writing lab on tour as well, which we will see soon. So the last set of data that we looked at is our grade distribution based on people that book appointments in the writing lab. The data shows a pretty overwhelming amount of seniors, mostly because this is the year they get the most exposure to the writing lab due to having college essays as well as internal assessments, which are projects in their IB classes. So next, we're going to talk about analyzing that data and what we got from it. So, in the data that we collected before starting our initiative, the amount of students who booked appointments that were upperclassmen were much higher. Total senior and junior bookings were around 1,300 and 900 bookings, respectively, and the underclassmen total for both freshmen and sophomores was 51. We have a need for improvement here after taking notice to our grade distribution issues. Since most people were hearing about the writing lab through their teachers anyway, we felt like the writing lab on tour going to English classes would be an effective way to implement outreach because it was our most reliable form. So, why writing lab on tour? Our original idea came from the problem that we had with grade distribution. By evaluating our data, we realized that we needed to do more to actually rope these underclassmen in. Going specifically to the students allowed us to do our part in outreach. And although posters can sometimes be a very helpful method of outreach, it tends to not be seen by a lot of people or just generally ignored due to the amount of posters that are already on walls. And we felt like these sophomores and freshmen needed a bigger push to really get into the writing lab, so we came up with Writing Lab on Tour. So here are a couple of methods and materials that we use. In order to actually plan the writing lab on tour, it took some efforts amongst our peer consultants. We wrote out a script for our peer consultants to use that included audience engagement as well as information about what students would be in what classes, what their schedules would be so they would know where they're going. We also separated students based off if they were going to freshman or sophomore English classes and who had an off period and at what time. The guidance allowed our students to have a stress-free writing lab on tour experience and made it easier for the consultants to figure out how they wanted to approach each class. So, after our initiative, we could say, how did we do? Because we want to kind of like analyze like what we did and to make sure we actually did a good job and did our part. So, each of our groups made it through Writing Lab on tour and had very successful informational sessions with our underclassmen. We generally did not have too many hiccups. It worked out well with the schedules and everything, but of course, there were adaptations. So, what adaptations were made? The scripts were modified so students could be more engaged and to not interrupt their work time. We noticed, at least I did after talking to a couple of groups, that the scripts were really long, and one of them included an activity where the students had to stand up. And freshmen and sophomores, they don't want to do anything. So we had to modify that a little bit to make sure that they would actually engage themselves. But speaking of engagement, okay. Okay, so back to the slide. Um, it was awkward not knowing what to do in my first class. Um, and the really important part of starting the presentation is starting it with a presentation voice. Um, Knowing how to speak to sophomores and freshmen is really important because if you don't start bold, they kind of drift off and it ends up feeling like you're talking to empty space. So using a presentation voice captured the crowd and allowed them to feel more interested and attentive to the speakers. As we talked to the students, we mentioned many things relevant to their work life and things that they would enjoy. We also noticed that teachers started to offer extra credit to their own students for visiting the writing lab. This is a unique addition that actually led to more students visiting and having meetings with us. And a really important aspect of presenting to new people, which I mentioned earlier, is roping them into things that they may enjoy. We brought up snacks and a comfortable environment for the writing lab, which eased tensions of making the writing lab seem like a really scary place. So here's a little bit of data after the writing lab on tour. So from the recent collected data, we can see that there are some recent freshman and sophomore bookings. I was super proud of the fact that we were able to rope in some students. A point to remember is that although data seems like it doesn't show much, trust that it is a gradual process. While we see that there aren't as many bookings as juniors and seniors still, there are a large change There's a large change from the original bookings, considering that the numbers are similar, while this data is new and the last was a semester's worth of data. And a model to use is to just really stay hopeful. The data was also just bookings, and we ended up getting a lot of walk ins where our students could just come in and learn about the writing lab and what we could help with. So our progress is definitely more than just numbers. As shown in the slide, we also had 9 people say that they came into the writing lab because of the class presentations, and it is slowly climbing up to being in the top 3 of where students heard about the writing lab. So next is, how can you guys all put your writing center on tour? So we realized that going on tour isn't really the most effective way to do outreach for every single writing center because everyone has different issues. It's all dependent on whether or not your school faces similar issues. So when presenting at a regional conference, we noticed that after one school had a quick conversation with us, they actually weren't receiving students with college essays, which is the most common booking for our writing lab during the fall season. This goes to show that the environment of each school is different, and you have to pay attention and collect data accordingly so that the proper changes are made. However, the process that we use can actually be used by other schools to make respective changes within your own writing center. Try to take a perspective away from our experience or the writing lab on tour process in general to formulate your own plans to address issues in the writing center. And we highly suggest that you do your own forums. Find out what your writing center needs and create a special initiative that addresses that. The ways in which you assess your problems could be different than ours, but we highly suggest that you try forums and see what your own peer consultants have to say and ask questions to the student body and see what they have to say as well. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Elisabeth.
Okay. Thank you, Nithya. So now that hopefully you have a more diverse writing center, it is important to know. Ronin, could you skip to the? Oh wait, I do it. Anyway, it's important to know how to adapt to your newfound diversity. For us, we weren't, since we mentioned earlier, we're all IB diploma students. We weren't exactly sure how to address clientele outside of that typical IB diploma student. So we're going to go through a few tips and techniques to properly address that new clientele. One thing to say, McAndrews and Resad, in their book, they talk about how writing is not a pattern and it should be individual and tailored to the writer that comes in and their piece. So I think that really goes in with just how you get more clients. So some tips we're going to go through. Number 1 is familiarizing yourself with the assignment before your client comes in. And 2, allowing for them to ask you questions about what they need rather than you giving them suggestions on what they should do. So that first tip that I mentioned, which was familiarizing yourself with the assignment, I think it's really helpful to know exactly what your client is bringing in before they come in so that they, one, know that you are welcoming them in, but then also that you're actually equipped with the credentials to help them. Also for us, we have 30-minute long sessions. If you're spending part of your session to familiarize yourself with the assignment that they have, then you're wasting their time and your own. So you might as well just do it beforehand. So if you don't already, on your website, you should probably have a place where the student can select what type of assignment or put in what type of assignment they're bringing in, just that you're able to familiarize yourself. And on this left-hand side, this photo is a photo of a screenshot of our writing lab website where we have a ton of commonly brought in assignments that students have. I think compiling them is really helpful because it can help the consultants and then also help students who are coming in. They can also read that. So a little example, let's say you don't take History of the Americas, which is an IB course that we offer at Lamar, and someone brings in their internal assessment, which is a long form essay for that class. What should you do? You should, 1, review the subject report guide from the previous year, which can help you know what you should or should not be guiding them for. Number 2, you should understand their research process and investigation methods for the specific IA. The students are meant to be historians, and they're using written and non-written sources, a ton of variety of sources. Also, physical things like museums or battle sites. Number 3, you should know the extent of their reflection. So, like I said, they're supposed to be seen as historians, so they're going through a very reflective process of their data collection. That second tip that I mentioned, that was allowing your client to have the space to ask you questions and guide the session how they want. We reviewed Felicia Rose Chavez in her anti-racist writing workshop, which shows her adaptations to Liz Lerman's critical response process when workshopping. In our writing lab, we've adapted these techniques and applied them to our tutoring sessions. Yeah. So artist posing questions. The goal is for your client to elicit pointed feedback on what matters the most to them in their writing. So they have the power to move on to what they want to, and then they could also follow up with additional questions if they need, which will help them think that the time was not wasted, like their appointment is successful, and they'll definitely come back. Um, But I have found that sometimes, especially with new clients, that they just aren't exactly sure what to do in a tutoring session. A lot of times, if they're new to the writing lab, they might be new to tutoring in general. So you can give them guidance and let them know what questions. So I think this second bullet point is more helpful, especially for shyer students. Um, like I think it's more successful to help them focus on leading questions that you ask. So respondents posing neutral questions. You're not trying to fix their work, but instead you're trying to gain insight as to how to best aid your client. And then in the end, they'll end up seeing for themselves what needs to be fixed. An example of this could be asking, how would you categorize your voice in this essay? Rather than asking in a more judgy tone and saying, like, why did you choose to do this? Instead, you're eliciting a question for them to guide it how they want. Another thing that I think is very helpful is just kind of a summary of 6 easy techniques to make your student or make your client feel very welcome and comfortable. This will definitely help to maintain the writing center the diversity in your writing center, which is just important as creating the diversity in the first place. Number 1 on this list is get to know your students. So know the names of your clients who are coming in, know their grade level so that you can greet them with just a simple hello when they walk in. And you can make them feel welcome and comfortable, which will definitely get them to keep coming back. Number 2, maintain consistent communication. Reach out to them after their session, whether that's through email or whatever um, app you guys use, and let them know that they're always welcome to come back with whatever assignment they need. Number 3, acknowledge and respect every student. If a student's waiting awkwardly in the doorway, which we've definitely encountered in our writing lab, it's important to acknowledge that they might not know exactly what to do. So invite them in, ask them who they're here for, if they're not here for, guide them to a peer consultant, and just help them get settled and get started. Number 4, practice cultural sensitivity. So you should keep an open dialogue and be sensitive to everyone's culture, whether that be learning style, language preference, whatever it is. For us in our writing lab, we have about 6 different languages spoken amongst our peer consultants. So we make sure that students who don't speak English as their first language still have someone that they can get proper tutoring from or guidance from. Number 5, incorporate diversity into the lesson plan. Or for us, we really like to incorporate diversity into our faculty. So, like I said, with our linguistic diversity, we speak a lot of different languages. But just make sure that your writing center is stacked with a ton of different students from a ton of different backgrounds and diverse personalities, so that there's always someone for every client. And 6, lastly, give students freedom and flexibility. Allow for them to read or present their assignment so they can approach it from their own perspective. That kind of goes back into the Felicia Rose Chavez thing of letting them guide the session how they want to go. Okay, so it's more like diversity is very important, and obviously you should care about having it in your writing lab, because it's more than just acknowledging the differences amongst students, but also creating an environment where every student feels like they belong and that they can come in and get help with their writing. We listened to this TED Talk our group did by Nadia Heron, where she discussed how inclusion can help students feel acknowledged for their identities, which will not only help them excel academically, but they'll also develop a stronger sense of community, which will give them the confidence to branch out, maybe show you some more personal pieces, or just come to the writing lab period. We want all of the students in our school to be good writers. So having our diverse writing center is definitely key to that. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna do another little activity. So if you're able to find that initial definition of diversity that you created, the one that we made at the very, very beginning of our presentation, rewrite a new definition of diversity. While you're writing about it, you can put in the chat or think to yourself or share to your partner how your definition has changed, if there's anything new that you've noticed now that you didn't before. Write it all down, and we're going to have 2 minutes for this. Okay, we're coming up in about like 30-ish seconds left of our activity, so complete your definition, and definitely we encourage you to share it in the chat. I like this response that we just got in about linguistic diversity. Yeah, I think that is that in our writing center, I love the fact that we have people who speak a ton of different languages, especially people who have different first languages, which is nice. There's always someone for everyone. Age diversity, yes. I think that will be even better once we get more sophomore and freshmen in. Okay, thank you all for sharing your definitions. Okay, before we go into a Q&A, we're going to briefly go over everything that we've covered just to help you start drafting some questions if you need. So first, for our footprints of diversity and steps for outreach, we went over posters, creating new outreach posters that are specific to your school and your target demographic. We also got feedback from our peer writing consultants and our student body about the writing center in general. We discussed the writing lab on tour, or WLOT, which showcases your writing center and advertises to new groups that are not often interested or even seen in the writing center. And then lastly, we discussed embracing and adapting to your newfound diverse writing center. Here's some citations that we used. If anyone wants these, I believe that they're in our Google Drive. We'll double check that right after the session is over. But if you would like any specific one, just send it in the chat.
Okay, guys. So coming back to answer any of you guys' questions. If you have a question, just speak in the chat, or you can speak up in here. I'll be glad to answer them. So yeah, this is just a question space for any questions anyone has. How can smaller schools think about diversity in their writing centers? Well, I think something they can do is think beyond the just basic things because a smaller school will obviously have less, I guess you could say, visual diversity, so less racial diversity. But I think you can think about more of grade levels in diversity and think more about age, which also I guess comes with grade levels and classes. Um, that's another way you can think about. So just try to think about different types of diversity because there's a lot of different types of diversity in the world. What's your question?
So this was actually discussed in one of our first outreach strategies. We did use posters, and on the posters we put QR codes for people to be able to book an appointment. And so then when they book the appointment, they can see the question about the feedback. So to get like a broad audience like that, the best way is typically posters, which makes it clear like what our message is.
Any other questions? Oh, you have a question?
Okay, so Abril's question was, how can STEM-focused schools be able to use the writing lab? Would the lab be of a lot of help in this case? And my answer, and I'm sure all the answers from every peer consultant in our writing lab would be absolutely 100% yes. Um, Although the writing lab seems like a very like English focused, language history focused, we're able to help with STEM papers, like STEM writing as well, because there are specific like types of like scientific writing that we explore within our own class, as well as like we write those papers as well. So just getting a better understanding of like STEM papers will allow us to also be able to address that. And me personally, I've had two people come to me with sports med papers. I'm not in sports med and I don't really know anything about sports med, but I've been able to help them with specifically like their writing structure and what they could change with that. So yes, STEM focused schools can have writing centers and it would be helpful. So we have another question.
Oh. Wait, where'd it go? There it is. So Tiffany said, what are some tips to get teachers involved so that students are encouraged to come into the writing lab? We found that after our first couple of Wallats, that teachers actually really enjoyed hearing our presentations, especially because it was coming from us students, I think. They really liked it. Some of them even offered extra credit to their students if they were able to come in. I think that just reaching out to the teachers and letting them know that they can utilize this for their own advantage. No teacher wants to read 100 really bad essays. So just get them excited about sending their students in. Maybe they can offer some extra credit and they can get some better assignments got given in.
Okay, if that's all the questions, we appreciate you guys watching our presentation. Y'all are awesome. We love you guys for answering all the questions because that's so kind.